Hello, Jane. Welcome to the program, and thank you for allowing me to have this conversation with you all the way from Edmonton, Alberta to Manchester in the UK.
Fabulous experience. I hope that it's a good one for you as well.
I'm sure it will be. So I suppose I will lead up to maybe the things you're currently doing, but I'd just like to maybe get a picture of the person, the person behind the figure that you are now, and talk maybe about your early life, and do you have a conventional religious life? Were you brought up with any background like that, or did the spirituality come later? I mean, I've read your bio, and just want to get a picture of where you came from, in the sense of what you learnt from your very early days. Did your parents, were they religious or spiritual in any way? How would you describe that early life, regarding maybe religion? Were you brought up to go to church, or how did that go for you in the early days?
So thank you for the question, David. I actually grew up in a very religious home. My parents were very strong Catholic. We spent most Friday evenings in church doing a veneration. We spent a lot of time on Saturday in prayer and preparing for Sunday. We never missed a church service. As I moved into my adult life, I finished my high school in an academy run by a religious order of sisters. I did my basic first 3 years of nursing in a Catholic hospital. When I was married, I actually became very involved with the church, and even to the point of directing the choir for 14 years. I loved to sing and enjoyed that very much. Then my son was killed tragically, and me exploration of what did I really believe. I spent a long time in the dark night of the soul experience, really challenging and looking deeply at some of my beliefs. At the same time, I was going back to school to do a master's. I looked at healing methods. I needed healing so much. I was looking at healing methods. I started studying Hinduism and Buddhism, shamanism, became an energy worker. Actually, I'm the first person in Canada to have done their research and published papers on using energy work to heal.
Yeah.
One of the things I discovered in my master's was that we in North America, in the Caucasian world specifically, are one of the few cultures that don't begin our healing by looking at what's going on in soul. And I knew very much that it was soul pain that I was experiencing, which took me to do my doctorate work. And in my doctorate work, I was really hungry to explore what spirituality was, and specifically, how did people around the world view spirituality? And so I really went on a very deep journey to explore that in myself and to discover how people in other cultures and other belief systems actually thought about spirituality, and began then to do some very deep soul healing using shamanism, art therapy. I'm an energy master. Those kinds of things became very much a part of my spiritual beliefs.
Right. So in that sense, you began with yourself, but then you found that you wanted to pass that on to others. And was that part of your healing process, dealing with other people who may have been in a traumatic situation? You had a very personal understanding of that. Did that help you to relate to others in that way, to help to heal others who had been traumatized in some way?
Very much so. Before my son was killed, I already worked with grieving people and traumatized people, but the experience was very different than the knowledge. And so going back to do my master's and my doctorate, Then I became a professor and a clinical counselor. And one of my first positions as a clinical counselor was to work in a prison with federally sentenced women to help them heal their trauma. And listening to their stories very much paralleled my story.
Yeah.
And we became very much a one-on-one session, because I realized that the methods that I used to help could also help them, but I also realized that some of their methods could also help me.
Right. And in your vision, you talked about the meditation and imagery. Could you describe how that happens and how that develops when you're helping someone? Is it a very personal thing with each individual that you work with?
I do a lot of individual work, but I do a lot of group work as well. So I use imagery both with individuals and in group. So at the beginning of that, my husband and I realized that we needed to aggressively find ways to help us heal. So we actually undertook a program very early in our grief called Transcendental Meditation.
Yeah.
And then I realized that was bringing some peace into my life, and I stayed with the women at the prison. And then I became a clinical hypnotherapist, and I realized that trauma shuts down much of the left hemisphere, where we actually do a lot of mental and cognitive functioning, and our trauma memories are often stored in our right hemisphere, and we process them very much in highly charged pictures.
Yeah.
So when I'm using imagery, we go specifically and directly into those places of the right hemisphere to capture the emotional and soulful experiences and that pain, and then to replace that with new images and new pictures.
Right. And I mean, I've heard about transcendental meditation. That's going back quite a few years now. But how does that differ from say the sort of meditation that most people would have? It seems to be been very successful over a long period of time. I just wondered what it has that maybe other forms of meditation don't have. Transcendental.
It was our beginning process. It was what we could tap into at the time. I have done many forms of meditation, and I still do. What is specifically unique, I believe, about transcendental meditation is you're given a mantra. And it's a specific mantra designed for you alone. And I still frequently will say that mantra over and over to myself. So for me, that has been the uniqueness of the transcendental meditation. These days, I love to do what's called a walking meditation. I love to be outdoors and just ponder on nature and meditate on the world around me.
Right. And when was it you began to write it, or was that an early part of your life? Was that just a natural progression to express it in writing, what you do, and to help people in that way? How did you? Was that
in the very days of my in the very early days of my grief, I journaled.
Yeah.
The counselor I was seeing recommended writing my thoughts, writing my feelings. About 10 years after my son was killed, I wrote my first book, and it was very much a process of it was catharsis to be able to pour that out. I actually cried my last tears first book, but it also made me realize how broken I had been as a human being, because when I went back to my journals to try to use some of that material, it didn't make sense anymore. So it had been a healing process, the writing, but it was not what I could use anymore to communicate with people.
Yeah. And has the work you do developed in the sense of from when you started? Is it just a situation that's permanently growing, or you're permanently open to different ways of doing things? Are there is it a degree of flexibility about what you do, and taking into account the individual's own situation? So there are many people that have been traumatized in many ways. Some you spoke about having a loss in the early days. Maybe a parent has died, or there are many many forms. I think the earlier it happens, that can be very deep, because obviously the individual is not old enough to understand that, but they would suffer some consequences, shall we say, in later life. And I've had, an understanding and an experience of that myself. So I just wondered how, when you might look back, is it necessary or important for someone to really understand what happened to them and how to live with what has happened, or are the two combined? Is there flexibility between the two? So I think I'm saying that is there a standards in the sense of someone's traumatized, and is it the case that they don't know they're traumatized in a sense, and it's manifest, the effect is manifest in other ways, their body, their health maybe, or behavior? Would that be...
You've asked me a lot of things there in
Yeah.
a few,
Yeah.
and so I will try to answer, backing up with what I believe you were asking.
Okay.
Grief and trauma are very unique to the individual, but it's also important to understand that we now have been studying these concepts for quite some time, and even though there's a uniqueness in how that's expressed, there are also some common threads and some theory to support practices that we do. And yes, the grief experience between a child and a parent in adult life as compared to what happens in childhood, very different, and can be very different. And part of that is because of the way the brain is developed.
Yeah.
So a child's brain, before the age of 5, for sure, a big part of the left hemisphere is not really functioning yet. And so for them to make logical sense of that, and when trauma happens, even parts of that can shut down. They may never have stored that memory in the first place. They can have the highly charged feelings, but not the memory. And when trauma happens in adulthood, even though the adult may have a very well-developed left and right hemisphere of their brain, trauma can actually have a closing effect on much of the left hemisphere, so they will still have these pictures, these feelings, but sometimes won't have a lot of information as to what actually happened. And then your question was, is it important that they remember everything? Some people never remember everything, but they can still heal. And it's important that we recognize that those are not the same words. Healing, forgetting are not the same words. Healing and remembering are not the same words. So we can do a lot of healing and maybe don't have the full memory of what has happened for us.
That's right.
So sometimes people will say to me, how do you know if you're healed if you still remember? And my answer always is, if you can tell that story without all the emotional load, without the tears in your eyes, the lump in your throat, if you can tell that story as part of your life narrative, you know that you have come a big way in your healing. But if you're still choking up with all that emotional load, there's still many layers of that to take off.
Right.
But you do want to remember, because I remember, because this now has shaped who I am. Everything that I do now is based on the fact that I've had this tragedy and that I've healed from it, and I now have something special to offer those who are walking along this journey as well.
Yeah. And because as you know, the human system has defense mechanisms, and one is to deal with the immediate situation, and as you say, it depends on what level they're at, or level of maturity they're at. Because to me, the way I see it, there are no life sentences, in the sense that because someone has had a traumatic situation in their life and they feel trapped. But I think it's wonderful. One of the wonderful things about the modern day is people like yourself and others who do wonderful work in changing people's lives and making a huge difference in people's lives. And that must be rewarding for you. You've come from a very deep situation, a very tragic situation, and you, in a sense, you've used that to help others. And I think it wasn't like that many years ago.
It is very rewarding.
Because I was a teenager in the '60s, and there wasn't much help around in those days. I don't think I wasn't aware of it, but now there is so much more, and I think that's a huge advancement. And the internet is great, and there are many ways people can get help, and online situations, and that's great. There's much more chance of someone getting through it, where many years ago people maybe just suffered in silence. Was that your experience in early days? Or
I think you're making some very good points. There certainly is more help available, and the social medias, the internet has made a lot of that more available. I'd also like to comment, though, that I've worked with thousands of people now, but I'm also aware that every individual has to make their own commitment to heal, because we can get stuck. And I know a lot of people who get stuck, and at some point people have to say, now this happened to me, yes, but now it's up to me. And I can actually tell you, if I looked at files, I could tell you the day that this person made the choice to heal. Wow. And I know that, sometimes people will also say, well, just give it time. But time in and of itself does not heal. Time fades memory, but time does not heal. Not long ago, I worked with a 92-year-old man doing his life review, and he was starting to strike out at the nurses, so I was called. And when I talked to him, he was reviewing 9 years or 89 years previous when he watched his sister drowned in the slop pail. And so that had never healed because he was never allowed to talk about it. He never had any help with that. So that was still buried. And now that he was transcending, now that he was going to die, he had to review that and come to some type of healing for that. Right. So those are important concepts, I think, to understand that there is more help available, but people need to make a commitment to that.
So is it the case that most people would have to sink quite low before they sort of hit bottom, maybe, and then something happens, and hopefully they can rise up from that? But would some people not be aware that they're traumatized?
Well, I believe that in our soul's growth, we are pushed sometimes into what's called a cosmic shove. And if we are lagging and not growing and not maturing, and, because to me, there's no difference between healing and growing spiritually. They're the same word as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. As people heal, they just automatically start growing spiritually. And if that's not happening for us, we do experience cosmic shoves. Yeah. And so reviewing life sometimes happens in big crisis. We know that crisis draws inward. And so in this man's case, his crisis was facing his own death. But we all have crises in life where we have to look at things quite differently.
Yes, that's right. And growing spiritually, you would think that would make it a lot easier to become aware. And awareness is a big part of this, isn't it? If someone's not aware there's a problem, maybe other people are, but that person who's not aware, it would manifest in some sort of negative ways. So
absolutely. Grief always and trauma always sneak out. You cannot really keep them buried because an unhealed wound has a way of sneaking out in sarcasm, in jealousy, in angry outbursts. So it has a way of expressing itself, and those are outward messages that you need to look a little bit deeper and do some healing here.
Yeah. It's as though sometimes the volume has to be turned up, and all of a sudden it becomes deafening, and maybe the person does something about it. They do things maybe to suppress the situation, but there's a certain level at which you can't really suppress anymore, and you become aware. So it's great to to know that, I mean, you talked about the 92-year-old man. I mean, this is not a thing with age, is it? Everyone is in a position, whether they're young or elderly, they can be helped, their lives can be turned around. And
absolutely. And even if there's only a week yet, the life can still be turned around.
Yeah, there's always hope. And you've obviously taken quite a unique approach to this, and you have courses. How would you describe the range of services you can offer, and how people can be helped by you? We
offer both of the certification programs that I offer. We begin by looking at the need for soul healing, and so it's very much not got anything to do with religion, but we're talking a lot about soul pain and how to help this person grow spiritually. So we look at the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of grief and trauma. I offer both the grief course and the trauma certification. We offer that locally, nationally, and internationally. And I'm always excited to get a new call to go to a new place. Those courses both carry with them master's credits. We offer group healing workshops. We offer individual counseling. I have written a number of books. Journey to the Saving a Fractured Soul was a bestseller. I've written Through Soul's Eyes, Reinventing a Life of Joy and Promise. That made Amazon's bestseller its first day out. My very first product, Listening to Soul Pain, talks a lot about what I learned from the women at the prison. And then I have Healing Soul Pain, which is also a video, and we have quite a number of CDs which are really healing, especially to help people back perhaps those parts of their spirit that may have stayed away at a time of trauma.
Yeah,
they're all available on my website, and they're also available on Amazon.
And in your mission, you also talked about the book, Setting the Captive Free. I mean, that's a wonderful title, isn't it? And very symbolic of what the work that you do, because something that's trapped, and you give that a way to come out and heal. And like you said,
in that there are a lot of comparisons. I'm sorry. In Setting the Captives Free, there's a lot of comparisons I've made between, it doesn't really matter if you're trapped in prison or if you're trapped in a body that doesn't work or if you're trapped by grief. It's entrapment of the human spirit. Right.
And you worked with a wide range of people, and you talked about working in prisons. Wow, that's. Did you find that challenging, or did you have expectations that were realised, or not many people would go to those lengths?
It was a extreme learning experience for me. Wonderful parallels to my own life. I became so aware that our prisons should be more places of healing than of punishment, because 93% of the women in there, the prison safer than their own home had been. They had been victims of childhood trauma, domestic violence, ended up on the street, and so it was a whole cycle of violence. So I learned a lot about the need for healing across the lifespan. I work a lot with our Indigenous people, First Nations Canadians, and work with cultures in various parts of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent quite 20 years of my life in Australia, and I had a lot to do with the Aboriginal people, the Indigenous people there, and I've met Native American people in the States. And as you know, there were some dreadful things done to them in the early days from the British with the Aborigines and the Americans as well in those early days. And that must be quite a unique trauma, because they need to live in the present moment, but there's still some grief going back many years before their lives started with their descendants. And I wondered how that's worked with them. Have they managed, or some of them that you've dealt with, managed to forgive? Because that's a really big word, isn't it? We hear about the importance of forgiveness, but I mean, the nation, thousands of people were subjected to dreadful treatment for many, many years, and that wow, that's a really big task, isn't it, to move away from that and come to a life where you maybe try and understand. You can't really forgive what happened, but I just wondered how that works when you're dealing with Indigenous people.
Well, there are many.
Yeah, sorry.
There were many effects of those aspects of colonization on the Native peoples. Certainly there was primary trauma, physical and sexual abuse. Certainly there was spiritual abuse. Their traditions and language were taken from them and their spiritual practice. But now we're also dealing with what we refer to as intergenerational trauma.
Right.
So it has affected the following generations. It's affected the way they've been able to parent. It's resulted in a lot of alcoholism, a lot of family violence from unhealed trauma. People strike out. So it's created a huge problem. The government in Canada actually is doing some funding to offer healing and training programs. And my company, Taking Flight International, is one of the companies, educational and healing institutions, where people can actually purchase from the financial credits of $3,000 that they've been given from the federal government to actually buy healing programs or pay us to do healing programs and education.
Yeah. And when I lived in Sydney, I did a course in Aboriginal culture that was led by Aboriginal people themselves. And whereas the very mistaken view of many years ago, here were these heathens, they were lower than the lowest form of life. I mean, it's dreadful, but that was the attitude of some people. But I found the reverse was the case in some ways, because I found how much we can learn, that they have a wonderful way of dealing with the earth. They have a wonderful relationship with the environment, and their respect of other people and elders. And if someone visits them, they might have no money, but they will move out of their rooms. They'll sleep on the floor and to comfort a visitor. So I just feel, and I know that I've learnt so much from being with Indigenous people. I'm in awe of the relationship they have with spirit and the earth, and we can learn so much. So I hope that some of that comes through, to other people, because from the reversing a situation of previous times, but to a time when I hope there is more understanding of these people and where they've come from. So I just retain my optimism about how that will work, because there are situations, I suppose, similar ones in the US with the Native Americans, and as you have in Canada. But I just find there's something very special about Indigenous people, and I love my association with them. I have very, very good friends in that way, and they've made a huge difference to my life.
Well, it's a spirituality that's very grounded and very basic, and it works for many people, and it's basically the practice of my spirituality is very much being one with the earth, being one with the universe, being one with the elements. Very
much so. And do you see your work progressing in the future? Are you open? How do you approach the future with your work? Do you just have an openness to more ways of doing things, or more ways of helping people?
I go where spirit calls.
Yeah.
And yes, I see the work expanding. I see the work going far afield to more countries. I see more people, professionals requiring this training. My LinkedIn group has professionals from all around the world always asking for questions about how do you heal this soul issue and how do you heal that soul issue. So myself and my staff are always open to traveling to other parts of the world to do healing work, to offer training. I've been doing some ongoing work in Greece, doing the post-traumatic soul disorder training there, as well as the grief recovery. And we're going back in May. We've been in there now, I believe, 5 or 6 times. A wonderful group of students, just always eager to learn more. And so, yes, as the calls come, we are prepared and we do go.
Yeah, and the internet is a great medium, and I do quite regular interviews with people, and only with their permission I put that on YouTube if they're in favour of that, and I'd be happy to do that with our interview if I have your permission to do that, because I like to.
You absolutely have my permission, because I think more people who hear the word and understand, like you say, awareness is the first step in changing anything. Awareness is what we're about.
Very much so. And if you do, I mean, I talked, well, North America is, there are quite a few contacts. There's an openness in North America, I find, maybe more so than in England occasionally, for people to open up about themselves and to do what they can to help others. So if there are any other people that would like some help in getting their message across, I'm happy to do that, because it's just, we can all play a part, can't we, in getting the message out. There might be people with technical skills or others who can help someone like yourself or another person who needs to that medium. So it's quite exciting, I find, and the potential of all this, where it can go in the future, and how better it can be if there are more understanding of people that are different in a sense, or people that maybe in the past there's been a very rigid idea that a certain race or a certain type of person is this way or that way, and I just hope there's a bit more flexibility now in how we approach other people, and not to say dismiss something they do because they don't understand it, to be more analytical and more open and more susceptible to understanding. I think more we can understand each other, the better the world is. And I think what finer thing can you do in life but do your best to make the world a better place.
Well, I believe that the more you know somebody, that's right.
Yeah, it's.
And we find that people are more the same than different.
Yeah, a lot more common ground. I mean, I have friends of various religions. I have a Muslim friend. I've been to his mosque, and I've been to Catholic mass. And I'm not a religious person myself. I was brought up in what's called a Pentecostal church. I think in the North American it's called that Episcopalian. Quite rigid, but that was okay. I think I had a sheltered upbringing up till mid to late teens, and that was good. I think sometimes some children can know too much too soon, or it's just I'm happy with that. I feel I've recovered. I had quite a rigid. I left the church when I was 17, and I had maybe an aversion to religion or God, but now I feel that I've moved on, and I'd like to do what I can to help, and hopefully between us we can do that. So certainly I'll process this video, and then I can send you a link to it, and certainly if there are any others that you think may be interested in this format, I'd be happy to hear from them. Let's see where we take it, and just help each other. So I think we may be coming towards the end of our time today. I wondered, is anything else you'd like to share with us about your work that we haven't mentioned, and how you see your work developing? You've just said that you're very open, and you have a lot of people. Do you have an organisation that you have people working for you, and they're helping you? You're the main person in the organisation. You go around the world. Have you been to England at all? Have you done any work over here?
I've been to England about 5 times. Mm-hmm. I have not done work there though.
Right.
We fly, yes, but I'm wide open to making that happen, and maybe you can be the catalyst for that. That would be a wonderful thing.
I'll put this interview and comments on my YouTube page, and also I think one of the reasons we're talking today was that there's my friend Sean Bradley, who does a lot of work on social media, and he's given me your details, and you kindly allowed me to have this time with you tonight. And he's there's a channel, an internet channel that called Doves for Peace, and we have speakers, and sometimes I play a recorded interview. And what we really like is someone who has a particular gift for something to be able to. Well, they can do it live, but what I find works, especially with people with different time zones, is for them to record. We can record a program, and then it can be played at a time that's convenient for the channel, and it's recorded at a time that's convenient for the person. So that's a possibility if you or any of your colleagues.
There's also the possibility.
Yeah. We can, be in.
There's also the possibility that I fly through them very often. I fly through Heathrow very often, and we might be able to do something in person.
Yeah, that would be really good. And also to
speak to a group, or I speak a lot.
Right.
A lot at conferences. I speak a lot and give a lot of keeps.
Or if yourself or others would be able to help, with programming. If they have a theme that they'd like to do a series on, we can sort of record that and put it on YouTube if that's what was suitable to yourself and other people. So I'll leave that with you. Let's see what we can work out together. So I've really enjoyed our talk today, Jane. Thank you very much for your time tonight. And
thank you, David. It was very nice to know you just a little bit.
And then maybe we can sort of communicate by email and get to know each other. Now I'll look up some more of your stuff. But there's any initiative, you can discuss with me about how you would like some help, or how your others could provide programming. We can work with that. So I'll leave that with you for now. So thank you for your time.
And I will talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
I will. I will certainly process that deeply.
Thank you, and I'll look forward to being in contact with you in the future.
Very good.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank
Goodbye.
you.
Goodbye for now.